Hey everyone, Dan and Neil here again. We come to you on the heels of our launch of Illumio Edge, a solution that brings zero trust to the endpoints. Now we wanted to talk a little bit about endpoint security and in particular, why we also need a solution like Edge.
You know, malware today, it's still a problem, right, Dan? We've got the most advanced security technologies, some of the most intelligent security minds, and threats are still there. They're still taking down these organizations.
Indeed, and Neil, you're right. And it's constantly, as we've seen over the past 10, 20 years, it's a game of cat and mouse. You know, as we continue to improve our detection technologies, our security technologies, the attackers update tactics, techniques, procedures on their side too. And we've seen that in recent variants of ransomware like Ryek or Maze.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. These threats, they still got in, they still infected millions of computers. And the core of the problem really wasn't the fact that they got in, it's just how quickly they spread. They got from A to B to C and they just kind of proliferated in the environment. And that's a lateral movement problem. I mean, we talked about this before, right, Dan? It's a popular technique that malware uses and it can bring businesses to their knees almost instantly.
That's right. And honestly, I think we've seen or heard from organizations, they're not that concerned about losing a single endpoint, right? It might be bricked, whatever, they can replace it, re-image. But when you've got malware that's coming online that's more and more efficient at moving laterally, that's really becomes the security challenge we need to solve for. It's not that initial infection, it's when that initial infection spreads and becomes a full-scale breach.
Yeah, I mean, the only way to really protect yourself, it's first you have to assume breach. It's going to happen, it's bound to happen. And if you operate under that model, you need to make sure you put as many security controls in place to prevent that spread. So we assume the breach and we put as much security in place so that when that breach does happen, it's not going to be spreading and bringing that business down to the knees. And that's really how you stop yourself from, the front page of the New York Times, how you stop yourself from that high profile, widespread breach.
That's exactly right. And that really, Neil, is the problem we're solving with Edge, right? By blocking in a zero trust fashion all inbound communications to a laptop, we really take away the attack surface and we give attackers basically nowhere to run. So ransomware cannot spread even if it's designed to, right? And that really takes away the idea of propagation, which again is perhaps the even bigger threat than that initial infection on a single endpoint via, say, phishing.
That's absolutely right. Bringing it all together, what we see is that, breaches are a fact of life. Malware, ransomware, security infections, all of this stuff is going to happen. You will be infected. But you don't just need the security controls at the preventative gate, like endpoint security, something that's doing an antivirus check, something that's doing behavioral analytics. You need all of that, but you need something in place that is always preventing the spread of a threat, preventing that lateral movement. It's that concept of zero trust and bringing it down to the endpoint, making sure that only what is explicitly authorized is allowed in, and that by design will prevent all of that malware from spreading and breaching and taking down the organization.
That's exactly right. And that's what Edge is for, to make sure that one single infection never becomes a high profile breach, letting us all sleep a little bit at least easier at night.
I know I would.
Indeed. So yeah, I think that's going to do it. We'll leave it there for now. Many thanks for joining us.